Welcome back to the Voice of Truth. Yeah,
Voice of
see
Truth.
there? Make sure I get the name right. I need a big sign. Voice of Truth. Take one.
My man here is extremely busy.
Yeah.
So sometimes I don't know if he knows where he's at
I
exactly.
forget what show I'm on. Yeah. All right. So the highly anticipated Mark chapter 3. With everything that we've been talking about Monday and Wednesday, with this violence and Peter's denial, let's dive into this right here. And this is going to be from Mark's Gospel, chapter 3, verse 20 through 23. I'm going to take it down to 30, but it really kind of stops at 27 for what we need, but it doesn't really stop there. But anyway, let me say this. Satan. What ideas come to your mind when you talk about Satan? Is Satan a metaphor, a concept, a being? What kind of comes to mind? Most of the Christian people say he's a being. Some say he's a concept. He's a whatever. And that, I will say, is a very, very tough question. And I don't want to go too far down the road because people will turn you off. And I don't want anybody to turn themselves off. They didn't believe in Satan. Well, just hear what I got to say. And then you'll see. And Rene Girard, he talks about this. And a wonderful book out there. I'll plug it. I Beheld Satan Fall as Lightning. Rene Girard, great book. One of those life-changing books when you read it. He talks about a triple correspondence between the first murder and the lie that covers the murder and Satan. This triple threat. I've got the book here. I've got to pull it up on my Kindle here when I get ready to read it. And that first use of scapegoat mechanism that we'll find all the way back in the book of Genesis. And where we rose up in violence and murdered someone. And in the Bible, that's going to be Abel. Okay? And I know what I'm going to say here may sound very controversial. I don't mean it in that way. But ever how you understand it, the human story even, that any time a community rises up and uses violence against the scapegoat and then lies to cover it up, what I mean lie by covering it up, saying that it was a good thing. You know, we had to protect our church. We had to kick them out. It was good. I mean, we had to. I mean, we couldn't let them keep going on like that. We had to destroy them. We had to. That's the lie that covers it up. You know, God confronted Cain. Where is your brother? Am I my brother's keeper? Don't be blaming me. He's the one that did it. I was just, he brought them other, he brought his fruits of the ground, and or he brought the blood of the lamb. I worked hard for the fruits of the ground. He didn't do nothing but kill a lamb. So I killed him. Right? So it's this violence here. So the lie that covers it up, by saying that it was a good thing, and then using that violence, because that violence will bring again social cohesion. Our church is back good now. We've got rid of the crazy person that was in the church. We've got rid of the person that was causing the violence. God is happy with our sacrifice.
Yep.
We've protected the church. So the violence, the lie that covers, and Satan. For Rene Girard, it's all the same. He doesn't draw a line. Ever what you do with. And, in the Bible here, sometimes Satan appears to be a concept. In other words, all that opposes the divines, the enemies of Christ, whatever, the enemies of God. He told Peter, we started on Monday, get behind me, Satan. Was Peter Satan? Well, his whole concept was against
the will of God.
The will of God. Jesus laying his life down. So he calls him Satan. And I know what we do. Well, Satan got inside of him. Satan influenced him. It's the same concept of this crowd.
He said, you savorist. the things of men instead of God. You savors them. That means you've got a taste for them.
Yeah, yeah. So, sometimes Satan appears to be a being, sometimes a concept, and I'm not sure that actually clarifying that is helpful. Maybe it's needful to have some ambiguity there to be more faithful to the biblical text. So here we go. I'm going to read this passage here in Mark chapter 3, verse 22. Jesus is accused of working with Satan. And the scribes which came down from Jerusalem said, He hath Beelzebub, and by the prince of the devils casteth he out devils. And he called them unto him and said unto them in parables. Now notice that. He said unto them in parables, How can Satan cast out Satan? If a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. If a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. If Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but hath an end. No man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he will first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. Now, verse 28 and 29, it's continuation here, right? This sounds so odd out of context. Verily I say unto you, all sins shall be forgiven unto the sons of men, and blasphemies wherewith soever they shall be blasphemed. But he that shall blaspheme against the Holy Ghost hath never forgiveness, but is in danger of eternal damnation, because they said he hath an unclean spirit. Now, wow, this sounds like way out of context. They're accusing Jesus of casting out devils with Beelzebub, and he's talking to them about blasphemy. Now, you can kind of see how it goes together. But the fact that Jesus responds to his critics and shifts from the language of Beelzebub to Satan, right? And those terms are most largely interchangeable because they don't object. They don't say, no, wait a minute, we didn't say Satan, we said Beelzebub. They don't argue the fact. So in their minds, Beelzebub, Satan,
What's the difference?
what's the difference, right? So we keep on going. So his critics say, you're driving out Satan by the power of Satan. Now, Jesus is kind of saying, guys, that's crazy. It didn't even make any sense, right? So if I'm working for Satan, why would I be working at driving out Satan? That sounds crazy. And that's, kind of how we read it. On the surface, he seems to be dismissing their argument. But remember, he spoke to them in parables. And what Rene Girard recognizes in his book here is a real depth to what Jesus says. Like in his parables, there's a surface level. We kind of get it. We kind of get what he says in parables and we move on. Right? Oh, I get it. Yeah, he throws the net out, drags in all kinds, throws back the fish you don't want, keeps the good ones. Boom, we got it. Well, let's move on. Something else. We already got it.
Right.
But there's something way deeper, right?
Always is.
There is. There's this deeper meaning that sits with us, and it's just there. And only when we really have our eyes open do we come back and uncover the full meaning. Now, let me give you a couple quotes from this book. Satan, chapter 3, Satan. Like Jesus, Satan seeks to have others imitate him, but not in the same fashion and not for the same reasons. He wants, first of all, to seduce. Satan is a seducer. Satan as seducer is only one of his roles that the modern world concedes to remember a bit, primarily to joke about. Satan likewise presents himself as a model for our desires, and he's certainly easier to imitate than Christ. For he counsels us to abandon ourselves to all of our inclinations in defiance of morality and his prohibitions. If we listen to Satan, who may sound like a very progressive and likable educator, we may feel initially that we are liberated. But this impression does not last, because Satan deprives us of everything that protects us from rivalistic imitation. Rather than warning us of the trap that awaits us, Satan makes us fall into it again and again. He applauds the idea that prohibitions are of no use and that transgressing them contains no danger. Now let me read you this out here. Jesus does not deny the reality of Satan's expulsion back in these verses. He asserts it. The proof that Satan possesses the power is the affirmation, frequently repeated, that this power is coming to an end. Now listen, let me read that again. The proof that Satan possesses this power is the affirmation. What power? The power of self-expulsion. I'm going to explain that. The imminent fall of Satan prophesied by Christ is one and the same thing as the end of his power of self-expulsion. The demonic or satanic expulsion of demons has worked previously, at least temporarily, because the violent outcome of scandal, the violent expulsion of scapegoats, works for a while. Then it stops working. Okay? And you're thinking, what is that? What he's getting at here is he recognizes that the way Satan controls us, the way Satan takes power over us, is by continually goading us into violence against the scapegoat. In other words, we need an enemy. As long as we always got an enemy, as long as we always have somebody to hate, we continue to fall into the same trap over and over and over again. Always. As soon as we create our peace, by directing violence against the scapegoat, we're then under the control of the first murderer, the lie that covers it up, and Satan. Again and again and again. And see, right now, what is the enemy that's being put before you? Oh, the list goes on and on. We got the Mexicans, enemies. They're coming over here bringing all the drugs in the country. We got all the other countries that are invading us. North Korea, enemy. The Muslims, enemies. Iraq, enemy. Russia, enemy. The list just keeps going on. Syria, enemy. Jordan, it just keeps going on. And we got all of these enemies. And our world would be safe if we had a wall. And I know you're thinking, wow, did he just say that? I did. Because we want to keep people out. By gosh, we got to keep them out because they're messing our culture up. And we got to stop it. And they're enemies. And they're going to bring down our culture of violence. Our very country was founded on violence.
Now, you know what he's saying. Because I would say probably 98.9% of the people that's listening to this podcast or
that just turned it off,
they are conservatives.
Uh-huh.
And they are banging on the desk right now saying, yes, I do want a wall or razor wire. I do want a border that is secure. North, south, I want walls around everything. And that is to maintain our American culture. We're afraid. I mean, we live in the South, and when people come here from the North and start blowing horns and making...
bringing that Galilean accent down here on us.
Bringing a different culture than we're used to in the South. I mean, we're used to soup, beans, and fried taters. And, we don't want our culture to change. We're afraid of losing our culture. But see, what I would to God that we would be focused on is the culture of the kingdom instead of the culture of America or the culture of the South or whatever you got in your head, because I am the biggest one of all. I mean, I am.
We've all been under mob rule or under this power of Satan. And so remember what I just said. As soon as we create our peace by directing, because what are we saying? We're going to get peace. As soon as we build a wall, we're going to have peace. As soon as we get that wall built, peace in America.
Oh, a lot of folks would think if you eliminated North Korea and Iran and Yemen and
Iraq, we'll have peace.
And
Russia,
Gaza and Russia and China. If you eliminate all them, then we'll have peace. And you think, well, peace lasts for a while. It doesn't. It's like a scapegoat. It doesn't continue.
It continues. It's the trap that Satan keeps with up. Oh my gosh.
Then you've got another enemy. Constantly.
I mean, we thought, okay, World War I, it's over. Germany's the enemy. What happens? Now we go to World War II. What happens right after World War II? We're in Korea. What happens right after Korea? We're in Vietnam. What happens in Vietnam? We're in the Middle East. We're in Syria. We're in Jordan. We're in Ukraine. It just keeps and perpetuating on and on and on. If we could just have this, then we would have peace. We're trying to bring peace about the same way the Romans did.
Yeah.
By the edge of a sword. And it's Satan's trap.
Which, when you when you said that this was the, what did you call it? The title of this program?
Voice of Truth.
I know, but what did you call it earlier?
Gospel in Today's Society. Yeah.
I mean, that is very fitting, actually. I mean, you misspoke it.
Yeah.
But it's very true.
Yeah.
It is the gospel in today's society. Yeah. I mean, that's where we're at. America does not, and none of us do. I mean, people out there are pounding their fists. We want that wall. We need that wall. And a lot of you will probably turn it off. And I'll tell you what, maybe we'll get some comments over these right here.
You know what? I'm just going to that movie with Jack Nicholson. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Yeah, that's right.
You want me on that. You can't handle the truth.
That's right.
I mean, and that was it. And this was about Guantanamo Bay. And what happens at Guantanamo Bay? The torture of prisoners.
I'll make you sleep good at night. I'll make you sleep good at night. You need me on that wall.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you see my Jack Nicholson? You need me on that wall.
That
was pretty good. So, and here's the thing. Whenever Satan begins to lose his power, when he begins to lose his power over us, what does he do? He raises up a demon. He raises up a scapegoat. He raises up an appearance of Satan in our midst so that the community will rally together against that adversary and cast the adversary out. So Satan has the power here to cast out Satan. Do you see what I'm talking about?
I do.
This is the power. And Jesus says that power is coming to an end. He will no longer be able to cast out Satan. Now see, this is the deeper side of this verses here that you've never heard before. See, when the community identifies that adversary, community, the church, whatever. When the community scapegoats that adversary, when the community directs their violence against that adversary is driven out, and in that the power of Satan is affirmed over the community again. Right? He's established his hold again. So when he's starting to lose grip, he raises up an enemy. You kick that enemy out. You do violence to that enemy. Pow! He's got you back under his control again. So it's just, so he has this power. So Paul talks about we know his ways. We know how subtle he is. This is not, we didn't know. It's like Paul says, we get it. And then, peace returns because that's what it looks like when violence is used for social cohesion. Now that we got them people out of the church, now that we got that wall built, now that we got North Korea put down, now that we got the Russians beat, now that we got the Germans beat, now that we got the Jews suppressed.
Paul said we are not ignorant of his devices, but largely we are.
Exactly.
I mean, Paul said,
and we as a church should not be.
That's right. I mean, that's hopefully is why we're doing this very thing, to turn the light on. To turn the light on.
Absolutely. Because the truth is, we've actually given ourselves over to the violence of the scapegoat mechanism. We've jumped right back in with both feet. And Jesus talked about you'll know the truth. And the truth will make you free. Free from what? The scapegoat mechanism, the power of Satan that we desire to be delivered out of. And Jesus' response here is, he said, no man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods except he first bind the strong man and then spoil his house. What's he talking about here? I mean, this is breaking and entering.
Yep.
He's got to break into the house. This is breaking and entering here. Remember, he speaks to them in parables. So Satan's power comes by raising up Satan, raising up an adversary, and in baiting us into revolting against that adversary violently to maintain the status quo. So as long as we can do that, boom, and Satan holds power over us, and we're locked into his realm.
It's no wonder he's called the enemy in one place, huh?
Right? And see, Jesus' real mission is to undermine that whole system, that whole premise of violence. And Jesus is the one not who drives out Satan. Now listen to me. Satan does that. Satan drives out Satan. Jesus is the one who sneaks in. When I say sneaks in, let me give you a verse here in Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 8. Which none of the princesses of the world knew. Right? Remember the mob, the princesses, but none of the princes of the world knew. For had they known it, they sure wouldn't have crucified the Lord of glory. He snuck in on them. Because they thought, aha, he's casting out devils by Beelzebub. They didn't know. They didn't know. They was
even comes as a thief in the night, don't he?
Yeah. And see, because he come to undermine this whole system of violence, to bring us out from under the control of the adversary. And what he does, he comes in, he ties up the systems that we think are powerful, and he steals the house out from under him. He comes into that strong man's house. Jesus does this not by opposing an adversary, not by confronting them directly with violence. He didn't. Remember, he opened not his mouth. But by presenting himself as the criminal who undermines the social peace. That's what he did. They crucified him naked, hung a sign up over his head. I mean, they just will not have this man rule over us, but he undermined the whole system.
He is everything that makes no sense.
That's right.
I mean, he doesn't come in like anybody thought.
Right.
Why don't he just come in with a sword and just hack Satan to pieces?
See, this is why when we read of terms like the wrath of God, because everything we've ever known is about wrath, then God has to be violent. Mm-hmm. We got to have a violent God because we're violent and we make God in our image, so he's violent. And there's no way that we can have a peaceful God. A God who is peace, a God who is love, and a God who is unconditional love and forgiveness and
gentle.
Yeah, we can't have that. So this is why that we see things the way we do. When we play into the systems of peace by directing our frustrations against an adversary, we simply reinforce Satan's power over us. When we refuse to play the game, when we know that we are actually the criminal, that we were actually the enemies of God, only when we oppose the status quo can we actually be freed from that predatory peace. As again, Rome, how did Rome bring peace? They brought peace by the edge of the sword. How do wars end? Because somebody is killed. They're ended because we make somebody surrender at the edge of a gun, the edge of General Sherman, he made a swath going down from Virginia down through Atlanta. He burnt everything. Uttered it. That's how peace, that's how the war ended. So this is not this kind of peace. Look here what the Hebrew writer says. Now keep in mind here, Hebrews 2:14. For as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also likewise took part of the same, that through death, through violence, he might destroy him that had the power of violence. I'm substituting the word there, violence, because violence, how does violence end? When lust is conceived, remember John, he said the lust of the world. When lust is conceived, it brings forth sin. When sin is finished, it brings forth death. We could say it this way, when lust is conceived, it brings forth violence. And the end result of violence is death. So Jesus, through violence, through death, what does he do? Destroy him that had the power of violence, the power of death, the power of the scapegoat mechanism, which is the devil. And deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to this mechanism of violence and death. I had to add a few words there, but I want you to understand what I'm talking about here. Satan has always had the power to cast out Satan. But Jesus says that power is coming to an end. And what's going on in our society right now? We are constantly given little adversaries that we direct our anger out at. we're given adversaries all over the place. You know, we're being taught to hate teachers, hate college professors, hate the woke, hate the LGBTQ, hate the Mexicans, hate the Canadians, hate the Democrats, hate the Republicans, hate, and this is just in this country.
Yep.
We're told to hate them all with violence. And we rise up and we see this violence spilling over all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Crazy violence. I mean, never before did we have, I don't want to get our YouTube channel shut down, but never before did we have people with guns going into places they didn't have to, shooting up innocent people. Why do these things happen? This is the Satan casting out Satan. This is the violence. This is the scapegoat mechanism at work.
Right.
Always, over and over. So this is what happens more and more, the less the scapegoat mechanism has its control over us. You remember what John said in the book of Revelation. He has but a short time. And he comes down, and with this great violence, this great wrath. So what is he doing? He's raising up every enemy. He's like, I need control again. That's your enemy right there. Look what he said. Look what he's wearing. Look what he looks like. It's your enemy. Kill him. This is your enemy over here. Look, he's not like you. That's your enemy. They don't believe like you do. Look over here. Because he knows the scapegoat mechanism isn't working anymore. Because Jesus put an end to it. He put an end to it. And so what we're seeing in society right now is an awareness of the injustice, and things aren't right. Now we don't know where to go. We don't know what we're doing because we have never operated from a kingdom mindset before in the history of mankind. We've never been this way before, as he told Joshua. All we've known is violence. Every country in the world was established on violence. Every community established on violence. And now we're coming to a place where we're seeing injustice. The scriptures talks a lot about justice, doesn't it? Righteousness, that's the same word as justice. Righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Spirit. So, this is the ideal of this Satan, the scapegoat mechanism, and people are coming to realize the ways that groups have been marginalized and scapegoated, and they recognize this is wrong and it shouldn't be happening and it's unjust, and we've focused our minds on other religions, other peoples, other groups, everything. And again, we don't know how to get along in the world. We don't know how to move through the world without an adversary. We don't know how to function without an enemy. That's why we got to have a heaven. If we got to have a heaven, we got to have a hell, don't we? We got to. We don't know how to function without it.
Right.
So this is where we are in our society. We're lost. So we have risen up all these new devils. I'm using that word. Directing our violence against them. Because Satan is trying, whatever you call Satan, is trying to reassert his power over us by giving us new enemies. Now we can't go back to the old scapegoat mechanism. We can't trade one Satan for another. See, these are the choices that we're going to have to make. Either at some point in time we got to stop with the enemies and move forward into new ground, new territory, or we can revert back and give Satan the foothold again and continue this whole process again and again. We've been doing it for 2,000 years. 2,000 years we've been doing the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
And the only way to free ourselves from this scapegoat mechanism is to thoroughly renounce violence. It's to refuse to violently drive out our Satans and instead give ourselves over as martyrs as need to be. Lay our lives down. It's a real deal. You know what I mean? It's a real deal. But, I know this sounds passive, still actively oppose injustice and violence wherever we see it. Because Jesus was never passive. Jesus is never okay with injustice, but he refuses to give in to the temptation to believe that if we are violent, we will create a more just world. Because violence never creates a just world. It only begets more violence.
Yep.
That's all I got to say, man. You bring us home. You can close this out.
You said it all. You said it all. I mean, it's the cycle.
It's the cycle.
And I think that's God's wrath is poured out on the cycle.
Yeah.
The cycle of violence.
The cycle of violence over and over and over. That's the scapegoat mechanism. Anyway, guys, Lord bless.
God bless.
If you've enjoyed this clip, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and tune in next time. And we're going to keep pumping these shows out for you. So, Don, any parting words?
Just keep tuning in.
Keep tuning in. Amen. Lord bless you all.